Welcome back, S'mores, to Beyond the Campfire. We've got another really great episode today. I'm your host, Will, here with Stephen the Indian, or as he likes to sometimes be called, Sahil. And today, what are we talking about, Steve?
Well, we will be taking the old country roads to West Virginia, and we will be talking about the Sodder children. And so,
Mm.
if I don't know if we have any listeners in West Virginia, but if at any point from about the 1940s to about the 1980s you were driving through Fayetteville, West Virginia, you may have seen a billboard advertising five missing children, aka the Sodder children, the children of uh, George and Jenny Sodder. So today we'll be getting into who those five Sodder children are, how they disappeared or potentially died, uh, where they could be today. Which I mean, at this point, they're dead. But uh,
Well, we said what, 1950?
yeah, they disappeared in 1945, which I guess the youngest one. And we'll get into all of
Yeah,
that.
we'll get into that. We'll figure it out there. We're going to do math again, like with Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. We'll do the math, but yeah. So today we'll be, we'll try to make it as lighthearted as possible, but we'll this is a little bit of a sadder episode in my estimation.
Mhm.
Um, but hey, that doesn't mean we can't get into some fun theories along the way.
No.
So, but yeah, I mean, it has everything. It's the end of World War II. You have some stuff with Benito Mussolini. You have some stuff potentially with the mafia.
Oh
You
boy.
have right, so. Yeah, I mean this story. The story has a lot of interesting tidbits that you might
Mhm.
not necessarily think about at the beginning. So, Will, any last minute thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns before we dive into it?
Well, y'all can make sure to follow us on Twitter at Beyond Campfire, also Instagram at Beyond Campfire. You can find us there. Those are our socials. You can also find us on YouTube at Beyond the Campfire Podcast. You can listen to us anywhere you find a podcast. You probably are already listening to us. If you like what you're watching and you want to help support us, we've got a Patreon going. We got a $1 tier, and then the $3 tier, where you can get some awesome behind the scenes footage. We recently had a really fun episode come out last Saturday, where it was the Robert the Doll and the lost footage of that. So stick around.
There we go. Awesome, awesome. Alrighty. Well, yeah, let us get into it. So, as I said, we are going to Fayetteville, West Virginia, and it is Christmas Eve, 1945. So, the war is over. Hitler is defeated. America is back.
We're
And
back, baby.
right, so history. I don't believe history repeats itself, but history does rhyme, right? So you could say, not to get too political, but you could say America's back in some ways now today too. But like, yeah, 1945 definitely, the country was feeling like America was back. You had a decade of the Great Depression. The 1930s was awful. Then you have World War II. A lot of people died in World War II. Europe was just absolutely destroyed. But finally, 1945, Hitler surrenders back in May.
Mm.
The U.S. drops the two bombs on Japan, and back in August. And so by the time you get to December 1945, uh, things are feeling great.
Mhm.
George and Jenny Sodder, the mom and dad, they are, living life, celebrating Christmas Eve, and things are going great.
Mm.
They have a lot of kids, which at that time
No.
uh, it wasn't unusual for Americans to have 5 to 6 kids. Although if you were Catholic, a lot of Catholics would have sometimes anywhere between 9 to 12 children, and so
Yeah, I think my grandma was born in 1942, and I think she was the youngest of 11, and they were all from different women.
oh, okay.
But that's because my great granddad's wives all died.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a Elon Musk
No, no,
running
he
around.
just they all died.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair. Which I mean, if he had the same proclivities as Elon Musk to have several children with several different women, hey,
Did you
no judgment on my part. I am a Christian, so obviously I would.
Yeah. Did you hear what Andrew Tate said?
What did Andrew Tate? Oh wait, I think I do, but yeah,
Yeah, where he's like, if you don't have babies from multiple different women, you are not a conqueror.
yeah. He is an interesting man, I will tell you that. So
All right, back to the 1940s.
yeah, so George and Jenny Sodder, they had 10 children. Um,
It's not bad.
and again, George wasn't being an Andrew Tate or a Elon Musk. No, he had all of these children with his wife Jenny. And
Did I
again,
tell you back before I met Maddie, and I was on dating apps? There was somebody I matched with, and the only reason why I remember her was because she had an outrageous idea of how many children she wanted.
how many did she want?
15.
15. Wow. Yeah, she really thought she was living back in the 1940s. So
Hey, you know what I told Maddie? And you might like have to have a discussion with me afterwards about this. I said, the Lord says that, children are arrows in your quiver, right? So, if you only have one children and you shoot that arrow and that arrow does not hit the target, that's pretty terrible odds. But if you have lots of children, your odds increase of how many hit the target and actually are successful in life.
for sure, yeah. And not to get too much into beyond the Bible, but yeah, I mean, I'm one where I'm just like, yeah, more children generally is better than less children. Now I'm not saying you guys out there need to have 30 kids, but I mean, for me, I personally want to have four at a minimum, but I'd like to have maybe five or six, ideally. Some of you guys might think that's a lot, but again, back in this time period where we're talking about 5 to 6 children was kind of normal. If you were Catholic, 10 to 12 was kind of the normal for
Yeah.
that group of people. But
Hey, we all can't be Brigham Young and have 50.
yeah, no, and well, in his case, he was pulling an Andrew Tate, right? So
Yeah, he had 50 different 50. He had 50 women and he had 53 children from them.
yeah, so
Mormons.
Mormons, right? So if there's a Mormon watching this podcast, sorry.
Oops.
Sorry, not.
Anyways, off of talking about how many children we should have.
I know, right? Haley's gonna have some. Well, actually, I guess. Well, we'll talk about that later. But yeah,
You realize that if we tell her to get clips, she doesn't do it.
yeah. No, that's fair. That is fair.
She is like a child.
Yeah. All right. George and Jenny Sodder, 10 kids, and one fateful Christmas Eve night in 1945, there's a fire. They grab some of their kids, take them out of the house, but 5 of their kids are never heard or seen from again. And that's where the mystery is, right? What happened to these kids? There's investigations. Some people speculate. I think this is probably the most boringest theory. And again, I'll get more into theories a bit later. But, the most, probably the official report was the kids died in the fire. I think there's pretty good reason to suggest that no, they didn't die in the fire. But I mean, this is a devastating event, right? And like I said, this episode is going to be a little bit sad because you have 10 kids, 5 of them are either dead or missing. That's terrible. That's awful. That is a tragedy of tragedies. And as we get into the story more, I really do feel for George and Jenny Sodder. And again, we'll talk more about it. But yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah, they never find their kids. Both of them died.
Wow.
Both of them died, not knowing what happened to their 5 children. So I'm not a parent yet, but yeah, I mean, I can imagine losing 5 of my 10 children. Like how awful that must be. Will, I know you're a dad.
Yeah.
I probably sympathize a little bit even more than
I think what would be the I could see where they're coming from, and I think the hardest part though is like the husband. Not to say women can't do this, not to piss off feminists, but I feel like the hard part for being a husband in that situation is not only did you just lose 5 of your children. I mean, think about how your wife is going through this, and how you've got to be there, like to help support her, and it just is. I feel like it'd be a big toll on me, and it would suck, like major suck.
Yeah, no, that's something where they were carrying the weight of that loss for the rest of their life, and
I think what makes it worse is like you said. I mean, there's a fire. They got as many children as they could out, and then the rest just like I mean, you'll probably get into the evidence and all that sort of stuff later, but you know, from the way it sounds, is there was no they were not found in the wreckage or like the rubble of the house.
Yeah, no, they were not.
So
Which again, the official police report was that their remains just got so burnt that it couldn't be found.
well, and see
We'll
that's the problem I have with that is, you know, the fire would have to be so hot to burn up bone.
we'll get into that, and
You know?
me and Will had talked about that a little bit in our 9/11 episode. So
Yeah, Steven over here with his serial killerness. Oh, do you know what temperature human bodies melt?
right, right. So yeah, if you're curious about what we're talking about, go back and watch our 9/11 episode. But yes, let's get into it. So we're gonna get into the lead up before the fire because I think the lead up to the fire might potentially explain why this is a mystery in the first place and build on some theories.
Mm.
So let's get into it. Okay, George Sodder, the father, was born in 1895 in Italy. He immigrated to the United States at the age of 13. And while he was there, he started to become pretty well known in the Italian community. He was known as someone that was a hard worker. He worked very hard on the railroads in Pennsylvania. He took some more work as a driver in West Virginia. And, he just took a lot of odd jobs, but worked really, really hard, built himself a reputation of being someone that was a good,
Mhm.
hardworking man, good guy, loved his community, loved his family. Eventually he meets Jenny Soprani, a storekeeper's daughter, and who had also immigrated from Italy. And eventually in 1922, they get married. So, which, let's see, if I'm doing my dates correctly, that means George got married at 27 years old.
Not bad.
Yeah, which is how old I am.
Well,
So,
maybe you'll find your what was her name?
yeah, sorry, that was just a kind of a little side
Maybe
thing.
you'll find her. Hey, listen, that just Steven, that just proves to me that you cannot deny that you have a shot at getting married and having 10 kids.
Hey, there you go, man, for sure. So, let's see. I could still get married before I turn 28. I have about 7 months and 4 days to do that. But uh,
Well, one lucky fan will get to take Steven to Las Vegas.
alrighty. Okay. Anyway, okay. So they get married. They decide to settle, not really quite in Fayetteville, West Virginia, but just about outside nearby Fayetteville.
Mhm.
And they settle in a community of a large population of Italian immigrants. Which again, people tend to want to be around people that are similar to themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, they live in the Italian community, and beginning in 1923, so they kind of basically started having kids right away. They had their first of 10 children. So far things are nice. The American dream is happening. They have built their life. George a hard worker. His business is growing. He's well known in the community. And in the 1920s, life's going great. George and Jenny, they're having the time of their life. They're having kids. They're having a successful business. Life is great. Any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns so far?
American Dream. Oh, sorry, my microphone was off. No, I mean, it sounds pretty normal to me. I mean, they're living the American dream. I mean, it sounds like they're a pretty normal family. Like, what could have gone wrong? You know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, I mean, well, and I'm about. Let's go ahead and get into it. Things start to take a little bit of a dark turn, as it does with this podcast, because we are a conspiracy theory, cryptid, all that good stuff podcast. So things can
Yeah.
never.
If you want rainbows and sunshines, go to Beyond the Rainbow.
There you go. Is that our gay podcast we're releasing at some? No, I'm just kidding.
That's me and Steven's OnlyFans.
Oh boy. All right. Anyway, so George starts to keep working. He's pretty prominent in the community. During the late 1920s and 1930s, back in Italy, a certain dictator is starting to come to power.
Mm.
And no, I'm not talking about the mustached Austrian painter. No,
That
ladies.
was Germany.
Yeah, that's in Germany. I'm talking about Italian dictator Benito Mussolini.
The other mustache guy.
There you go. Did he have a mustache?
Yeah, he had a mustache. I'm pretty sure
Really?
all the greatest dictators had mustaches.
I guess so.
Stalin,
I guess
Fidel. Well, Fidel
Kim
Castro had a beard.
Jong Un needs to grow one at some point. Then
Who needs to grow one?
Kim Jong Un.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mussolini. Let me see. I think he had a mustache. No, my bad. He did not have a mustache. He was clean shaven.
Okay. A little bit of a. I don't
That's
even
why.
know why I need to. You know what? I'm not. I'm not going to share this. I'll leave that for the Patreon episode. There's an interesting fact about Benito Mussolini that I learned against my will in my law class last semester.
Do we need to pause the recording so you can say it?
Okay, you know what? I got your curiosity pike. This has nothing to do with the episode. So, Benito Mussolini, dude, was a sex addict, and
What dictator was it?
I mean, I guess all of them could have, but no. Okay, well, Badu was like really bad. So my law professor last semester, I don't know why he told us this, but he's like, yeah, Benito Mussolini was having sex with 10 to 15 women a day. I was like, a day?
Okay, hold up. When you're like, oh, he's a sex addict, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe he had like one good woman, and they just like to frolic in the fields every now and then. But then you're like, no, he had 10 to 15 women one day.
Yeah, yeah. So again, this is not relevant to this story at all, but since I brought it up, Benito Mussolini had sex with about 10 to 15 women a day while being the dictator, and he said that this was good for his health and his rejuvenation. And a lot of times he wouldn't even really look at these women. I mean, he did tell his aides to go like find the prettiest women they could,
Yeah.
but yeah, he'd be working, and he's like, okay, I need to do it. So his aides would come, they'd bring in a woman, he'd go at it for 3 to 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, however long it took him. And then when he was done, they'd take the woman out. He'd go back to work. And then later on in the day, he'd get the urge again. And then they'd bring in a different woman.
Bill Clinton. You wish you were Mussolini.
And yeah, that's just something he did for years. So,
he's putting OnlyFans stars to shame.
Yeah. So, poor women. My goodness.
I know.
Well,
like it's like when women are like they got a bad hookup or whatever. But imagine being like, oh, it wasn't he wasn't ugly. No, he was a dictator.
Yeah, and
he really puts the dick in dictator.
Golly, yeah, he does. So,
anyways, Mussolini, everybody.
Mussolini. So, okay, but anyway, George Sodder did not like Benito Mussolini. I wonder why. I don't even know if he knew all that stuff.
The sex was it the dictatorship? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have this conservative Catholic guy who's married and having 10 kids out in West Virginia, and then you have this dictator in Italy who's sleeping with 10 to 15 women a day. Yeah, I mean, these two dudes could not be more different. But George Sodder was not shy about telling people in the Italian community that he did not like Benito Mussolini. Now, this alienated a lot of people in the Italian community. A lot of these guys love George Sodder. They're like, yeah, he's a hard worker. He's a good family man. But George Sodder starts talking. He starts talking about how Mussolini is awful. He's a dictator. He's going to be the death of Italians. And
what can you do?
Some people in the community they don't really take a liking to this. So
it's kind of like insulting somebody's mom.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, things kind of go on. The last of the Sodder children, Sylvia, she is born in 1942, so about 19 years after their first child.
Wow, that is an age gap.
Yeah, no, for sure. But
I think in my family, my youngest brother, there's 14 years between us.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So,
But I couldn't
uh,
imagine, like, I mean, I know there are, I think still people today, there are some people that have like a 19-year gap between them and their youngest siblings.
yeah, I mean, and again, like Catholics and Jews still exist, and a lot of them are still kind of living the same way they would have 100 years ago, right? So,
Hmm.
so yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily impossible. But yeah, okay. So, um, 1943, Mussolini is taken out of government. He's executed. He's gone. However, George's criticism of the late dictator still left some hard feelings.
Ooh.
So, in October 1945, about 2 months before the fire, a visiting life insurance salesman comes to George's house, and at first he is, talking about, hey, here's some sales, here's some
Hmm.
life insurance.
Yeah.
And then
Need
all of a
that.
sudden, he goes off on George, starts yelling at him, starts yelling at George, starts yelling at his wife. The life insurance salesman, it's just like, what the heck, man? The life insurance salesman warns George that one day his house would go up in smoke and you and your children are going to be destroyed. And then he attributes all of this to the dirty remarks you've been making about Mussolini.
Womp womp.
Weird. George, of course, kicks him out of the house. Doesn't really think much of it at the time. But, yeah, that's not something that happens every day.
No, it's like, imagine like the vacuum salesman coming and you're like, oh, I really like this vacuum. It's really cool. And then they go off on you and they're just like, oh, you dirty scumbag. I know you voted right. Wait, this sounds like America today.
Hey,
Heard it
man.
here first.
Again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
So, a few weeks later, another person comes to the house and they're just like, hey, I'm looking for work. I fix fuse boxes. Could I take a look at your fuse box?
Oh, Lord.
George is like, I mean, yeah, sure. You seem like a nice young fellow looking for work. So, he walks him out to the back to look at the fuse box. And the guy turns around, looks at George, and he says, hey, this fuse box is going to cause a fire someday. George is a little bit puzzled by this observation.
What? Wait. Hold up. This is
Yeah.
this. No, you can continue. I was just making a side comment. Like, whoa, hold up,
Okay,
man.
yeah, no, that's fair. It's weird, right? It's weird.
Yeah, fishy.
Uh, but, he's like, okay, well, I don't want there to be a fire in my house. So he has the house rewired with an electric stove installed. And afterward, the local electric company comes and they're just like, yeah, your fuse box is good to go. It's safe. You're good to go, man. And there's mere weeks before the fire.
Mm.
All right, last thing, and then we'll actually get to the night itself. Again, a few weeks before Christmas that year, George's older sons told their dad that they saw a strange car parked along the main highway from the town and that the people in the car were watching the younger Sodder children as they returned home from school.
You know, something smells fishy, and it ain't the local hooker.
Was the strange car a black Volga?
Oh, the Volga. It's coming.
I know, right? Throwback to an earlier episode. So, yeah, if you guys haven't seen it, go back and watch our Black Volga episode. We don't actually know what the strange car was. I wish I did know, but yeah, some strange men were watching the younger Sodder children return home from school. So,
I don't like this.
with all that background, we finally get to the night in question.
All right, here we go.
So, strange occurrences the weeks leading up. All right, so it's Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
The Sodders are celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
Like any good Catholic, they are thankful for the birth of Jesus, and um, you know, they bring the gifts, they have all the things, And the younger children, they're so excited. They're like, Mom, Mom, please, can we stay up past our usual bedtime? So Jenny, she's like, yeah, I mean, it's Christmas Eve.
Yeah, why
Why
not?
not? You don't have school, you don't have anything to do. Yeah, sure. It's 10 p.m., but
Wait,
you can't.
you're telling me that the 19-year-old had to ask permission to stay up?
Well, no, this is the younger children.
Oh, the younger children. Okay, because you were like, oh yeah, the children were wanting to stay up, and I was like, isn't one of them like 19 years old? Make your own choice.
Yeah, I mean, probably the 19-year-old was supervising them because I highly doubt that Jenny Sodder was allowing her,
Yeah.
14-year-old to 9-year-old sons stay up, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, she's like, okay, yeah, you guys can stay up a little bit later. Uh, but as for me, I'm gonna go to bed. So that's weird. Did you hear that?
Yeah, what is that?
I'm at the law school, which we're on spring break, so there's not many people in the building. So it's possible they're doing some security checks. Um,
Preach and clear, preach and clear.
I know, right?
We see Steven get swatted on camera.
Right? It's just like,
What are you doing in here, you little Punjabi?
yeah, dude, it was weird. I walked in. The law school's been one of the emptiest I've ever seen it. So, there's a few times I've walked in on here on like a Sunday evening, and it was about as empty as then. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of weird being here and not people being around. But okay, but anyway, the next question. So Jenny goes to bed. The children stay up, and she's sleeping. And at 12:30 a.m., so this is Christmas morning, Jenny hears a phone call. She's like, "That's weird. Who's calling at 12:30 a.m. on Christmas?" So she gets up, she goes downstairs, she answers the call. The call was a woman whose voice she did not recognize. And she asked for a name, and all she heard was the sound of laughter in the background and clinking glasses. And Jenny's like, okay, this is weird.
Creepy.
She tells the caller, hey, you reached the wrong number. And the woman just gives a weird laugh.
I don't like this. Uh-uh.
So, Jenny's like, okay, whatever. She hangs up, returns to bed, goes back to sleep. As she's returning to bed, she notices that the lights were still on and the curtains were not drawn. Those were two things her kids normally did um, when they were going to sleep. So she's like, okay, well, I'll turn off the lights, I'll draw the curtains. She's walking around the house. One of her kids, Marion, is asleep on the living room couch. So Jenny's like, okay, I guess the other kids either are up in the attic staying up later or they've gone to bed. So she closed the curtains, turned out the lights, returns to bed, and she's just like, yeah, it's really weird that they wouldn't turn off the lights and close the curtains. So, but
Oh.
12:30, weird phone call. Kids haven't turned off the lights, drawn the curtains, but she's like, okay, whatever, I'm going to bed. At 1 a.m., Jenny again wakes up. She hears the sound of an object hitting the house's roof with a loud bang and then a rolling noise. She's like, that's weird. She listens out again, but now it's quiet. So she's like, okay, maybe it was a raccoon or some kind of other animal or whatever. At 1 a.m., she goes back to sleep. Half hour later, she wakes up a third time, this time to the smell of smoke. Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns so far?
Well, I know how the dad feels because as a dad myself, we sleep through anything and everything. Leave it to Jenny. But no, it just that's just what weirds me out. Because
We'll
like,
get to George actually in just a second because bro is actually sleeping through this. It's not until Jenny wakes him up that he actually wakes up.
I'm like George, I'm sleeping through it. But what weirds me out is because when I like, as you guys know, I'm the one who gets all these episodes. Like, I don't do the research for Steven, but I get the episodes planned out for what we're doing in the future. And like, I always kind of heard of the Sodder children that like fire happened, they got the kids out, that was it. But now like we're learning about testimony of what happened inside the house, and it's not like, okay, the fire happened and they lost count of their kids. No, their kids said we're going to stay up and hang out, and then the next morning, and then that night, mom comes down the stairs. Okay, lights aren't off, curtain ain't drawn, and there's only one kid asleep on the couch. Where'd the other kids go? That's what kind of freaks me out a little bit.
It's weird, right? It's suspicious behavior. But like I'm even walking through this myself as a parent one day. It's not enough to where I'm thinking a fire is about to break out or
Right.
going to be kidnapped, right? It's just like, oh, they should have done this, but you're not thinking they just got kidnapped. You're just thinking,
Yeah. But what makes it even more spooky, and like honestly, when I was talking about this one, I was like, maybe this is more true crime kind of case. But now we're talking about this. This is a truly terrifying campfire story, because it's not just like, oh, the kids went missing. Where'd they go? No, it's like, first
there's
off,
a buildup,
there's
right?
a buildup. Like, you got the life insurance guy who's threatening George and Jenny, and then all of a sudden, he's got this guy come to look at his fuse box, and it's like, that could cause a fire. Gets all this electrical work redone to fix everything. Then the kids see this black car. Then that night, you hear the phone call and the rolling on the roof. It's just
It's weird, yeah. It's definitely odd, and it's one of those things where Jenny didn't really think about those things until after the fire happens. And
yeah.
like, wait a second, what was going on? But yeah, let's get to the fire because I know we're 30 minutes in, and everybody's like, "How are we still not at the
I
fire?"
know.
We took some detours, mentioned Black Volga, talked about Benito Mussolini's office.
Sex life.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, when we were building this, the fire that was started, it was me and Steven. As you guys can tell, it's taking us forever because we're not using them lighter or matches. We're using two sticks
There you go.
and rubbing them together.
All right, 1:30 a.m. Jenny smells smoke. She gets up, and yeah, she runs across. She's like, "George, wake up! Fire!" George gets up. He's like, "Oh my gosh, fire!" Uh, they run around. Uh, they go wake up their older sons, and both parents and four of their children. So Marion, who was the daughter who was sleeping on the couch. So they get out with Marion. They get out with Sylvia, the youngest. Sylvia's probably about 2 or 3 years old at this time. So Marion, Sylvia, and then the two older sons, John and George, they all get out, right? So they're out. They escape the house, and they go out into the snowy West Virginia fields, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, fire!" But hey, we're out. We're safe. And then they're like, "Wait a second. Marion, Sylvia, John, and George are here. So you got the two oldest. We got Sylvia, the youngest, and we got Marion. Where's We're missing five. Where's five of our kids?" So they frantically start yelling. They start to yell their names up, from the thing. They don't hear any response. They can't get up there. George runs in, but as he gets to the stairs are on fire. He's like, "Dang, I can't run up the stairs." He's like, "Okay, all right, let's go to the next thing." He runs up. He yells at his sons, John, George Jr., grab the ladder. They're like, "Oh, yeah, all right, let's grab the ladder. We're going to climb up." They go to grab the ladder. The ladder's not there. The ladder is always there. Nobody moves it. The ladder's always in that same reliable spot. The ladder's not there. Weird, right? Weird. George is like, "Okay, well, let me grab the fire hose." So he goes, he grabs a fire hose. Water's frozen. Water's not coming out. He's like, "Dang it." He's like, "I gotta save my five kids, right? I gotta save my five kids." That dad instinct's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He grabs some of the shillings on the house, and he forces himself to get to the roof of the house And by the way, this is not the natural way to climb up a house. He's getting cut. His arm's now bleeding. He's gushing blood. His face is getting cuts. He's getting cuts climbing his house. But he gets to the top. Blood is coming all over himself. But he looks in the attic. Fire everywhere. He can't get in. He calls out to his kids. Still no response. He's forced to go back down. So he jumps back down. He's like, honey, call the fire department. His wife calls the fire department. It's 1:30 a.m. Fire. They're on the outside of Fayetteville. They're not quite in Fayetteville property. So while they're waiting, George and the sons run to the car. They're like, okay, maybe we can get in our car, drive to town really quickly, get the fire department to come maybe a little bit faster. I don't know, make something work. They get in the car. Car's not starting. They're like, wait a second, this car always starts. This car's fine. Why is the car not starting? They try to get it running. They try to get it going. And so now they're like, water's frozen. Ladder's gone. Car's not working. Like, what the heck is happening? Like, everything that could possibly go wrong is going wrong. 7 hours later. That's right, yeah. 7 hours after this fire comes. Fire trucks come. They put out the fire. And the investigation begins. So, thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
I don't think those kids died in that fire. And I don't think that fire just happened by happen chance. I mean, based off what you've told me, there is way too much fishy stuff to be going on for this to be normal.
Yeah. And there's more fishy stuff to come. We're gonna get into the investigation, the police cooperation or lack of cooperation, and the attempts of the Sodders to find their kids. So
what's crazy to me is, before we continue, is you're over here telling me about all this, and it's just, what's so crazy to me is this guy George can speak out against a dictator and be like, oh, it's wrong. I don't like this guy. I'm Italian and I don't like him. He's not one of us. And be a well-respected person in the community. But as soon as he says that, everybody's against him.
Yeah. Which, I mean, hey, I guess be careful who you share your political views with, right? But
yeah,
I digress. So this is sad. This is really sad. I'm kind of like, as I was telling that, I was kind of feeling the emotions with George because, at first, like, you're like, oh, it's not totally hopeless. It's like, oh, I can get the ladder. Oh, ladder's not working. All right, well, let me grab the fire hose. Oh, fire hose is not working. Okay, you know what? I'm going to physically force myself up on this house to save my 5 children. And he's bleeding, he's gushing, and you know what? He doesn't care because this is a father who wants to save his children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, man. It's it just I really feel for George and Jenny.
Oh yeah,
I really really feel for them. But yeah, okay. So 10 a.m. Fire's out. Police, firefighters are looking through the wreckage. Fire chief comes up, tells them, George, Jenny, we haven't found any bones, as we would normally expect to find in this kind of case. And so, we will continue to look, but we haven't found any burnt bodies. We haven't found any bone fragments or things that you would expect to find. But I think your 5 kids died in this fire. I think as long as this fire was burning for, I think it's possible that it was hot enough that their bodies just got burned completely. So, Fire Chief Morris tells George, leave the site undisturbed. We're going to continue investigations. Uh, 4 days later, though, George and his wife, they just kind of get sick of it. And they're just like, you know what? We're going to bulldoze over the site and we are going to kind of just turn this into a memorial garden for our kids. So, but they get some investigative reports. So the local coroner comes, and he gives his official report. And I know, Will, you don't like the government, and
No.
you know what? In this case, I do think the government was acting a bit fishy myself. But the local coroner comes, and he says the official cause of the fire was faulty wiring. So
Are you
wiring
kidding me?
was faulty despite them getting new wiring just a few weeks ago. And he said the house burned down and the children were destroyed in the fire. And yep, that's what happened. So, Sodders, sorry, that sucks. But yeah, your kids are dead.
Oh,
Here-
shucks.
Here's your death certificates for your 5 kids. Go ahead and move on. Live the rest of your life, but your kids are dead.
Okay, so I don't like big government. Big government, like big daddy government up at the top. I mean, right now, I like the administration we have. Not going to get into that. This isn't a political podcast. But when it comes to like local government, I tend to be more okay with local and state because I believe in more power to the states, more power to local. The only issue is if you've got, let's say the mob is running through Fayetteville and, George was this high up guy, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, I don't like that guy," and then all the other people are like, "Well, we don't like you," and then he gets like if they kidnapped his children or kidnapped his kids, killed them elsewhere, whatever, you know, coroner could be paid off.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I mean, I'll spoiler alert. One of the theories is that this was the mafia that was involved. The mafia was mad about George Sodder and the things they said, and this was their way of getting revenge on the Sodder family. But yeah, I mean, if you know anything about the mafia in the 30s, and 40s, very influential, had a lot of connections, had a lot of
Yeah.
power. Could you pay off a Fayetteville coroner?
Oh yeah.
Maybe. It was definitely well
Money
within their
is
if that's what they were inclined to do.
money is power.
So, okay, I got a little bit more investigative stuff because the Sodders don't let this go, and they really spend the next several decades trying to find out what happened to the children.
Yeah.
So we'll get into all of that, and then finally, at the end of all that, we'll run through the theories, and then we'll end the episode with what I think happened, what Will think happened, and we'll go to there. So it'll be a little bit of a longer episode today. I know you guys have kind of gotten used to the 30, 40 minutes we usually do. I'd say this episode's probably going to be about an hour, which, hey, no worries. It's been a while since we've had an hour episode.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's kind of fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's,
there's a lot of information, and it's
yeah. I mean, again, most mysteries, you have the build up, you have the event itself, and then you have the aftermath. And usually that all happens within a few months to a few years. Here we're talking decades worth of stuff, right? So, but okay, so uh, the December 30th newspaper, so this is about 6 days after the fire, the newspaper initially reports that the bodies of the Sodders had been found. It's like, wait a second.
wait, hold up.
It's like parents are like, wait a second, that's news to us. Then eventually the newspaper quickly retracts and they're like, oh no, wait, actually, we think parts of the body have been found. And then all of a sudden they retract that again, and then they're like, oh no, wait, actually, no, we were wrong. Nothing was found. Yeah, kids just were completely burned in the fire. And it's just like, that's two heck of a mistakes to make.
Yeah.
So, take with that what you will. But I mean, naturally, George and Jenny Sodder, they're already grief stricken. The newspaper kind of pushes out these two contradictory reports. They're like, something really, really weird is happening. And we want to investigate. So,
Yeah.
The funeral for the kids happens on January 2nd. The parents are too grief stricken to attend, but however, their kids do attend. The rest of the kids do. So they go. And the next several decades, the Sodders launch a series of investigations. Most famously, they put up a billboard starting in 1946, and that billboard is up until the 1980s when George and Jenny Sodder pass away. So after their death, the billboard goes away. But again, I don't know if we have any Fayetteville, West Virginia people listening to this, but again, if you were alive at that time, you may have seen this billboard for the Sodder children saying, "Here are the five. It's not too late to find out what happened. If you have any information, please let us know."
Yeah.
Thoughts, comments, or questions before I get into the fruits of George and Jenny Sodder's investigations?
Well, what I was going to say right quick was I just looked it up. Do you know what temperature bones burn at?
What's the temperature?
Typically need to reach between about 1400 degrees to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Really interesting because I'm about to get into the temperature, but yeah, it was nowhere close to that hot.
Well, the reason why I say that is because I looked it up and I was like, house fires can reach extremely high levels, potentially exceeding 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, with the ceiling being the hottest and the floor being the coolest.
Oh, wait. Actually, let me refrain. So, 1400 or 14,000?
1400.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe the government has somewhat of a case, but we'll get into that in just a second.
Yeah.
I still think there's a lot of other reasons to not trust the government's official report.
Yeah.
Okay. So they asked the police. They're like, "Hey, police, can you do further investigation?" They're like, "Nah, it was an electrical problem. You just need to accept that." All right. They're like, "Okay, let's go to the state police." So they asked the state of West Virginia, "Hey, can you investigate what happened?" West Virginia police are like, "Nah, we're good." Sodders reach out to the FBI, who the FBI director at that time was J. Edgar Hoover.
Don't like that guy.
Which, we'll talk about Hoover in other episodes, I'm sure. Have we already brought him up in any of our episodes, Will?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Well, okay, if we haven't already brought him up, S'mores, get ready. We will be talking about J. Edgar Hoover at some point because he shows up in some other stuff. But
Hate that guy. Hate him.
I digress. But the Sodders reach out to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, and he actually personally responds to their letter. This is what he says. "Although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within the investigative jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Investigation."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he says. So, FBI is not helping. Fayetteville police is not helping. West Virginia police is not helping. So, in August of 1949, almost 4 years now, George asks Oscar Hunter, a Washington, D.C. pathologist, to supervise a new search through the dirt of the house site. After a very thorough search, things like a dictionary that the children had found was found. Coins that the children had were found, and also several. And this is where things get a little bit interesting. Several bone fragments are found.
Huh.
So now we're going to get into the bones because I think there's some evidence to suggest it could be the kids, or at least one of the kids, or possibly something else. So I'll get into that. I'll tease you guys just a little bit there, but one thing's interesting. If human bones were going to be burned, how are books surviving?
Yeah. Yep.
Some of the books And actually, some of the toys survived the fire.
Yeah,
Weird.
bone would need to have a lot more heat than a toy would.
Right, which suggests, and again, one of the theories is that the kids did die in the fire. However, their bodies were taken away, and I'll get into that theory in just a second too. Um, okay, wow, we're 50 minutes in. This okay, we might be able to get this episode done in an hour, but let's see. We might go a little bit longer. Um, we'll see. So hey, you know what? It's okay. This is
Yeah,
I'm having fun. I'm
yeah.
The bones are sent to the Smithsonian Institute, and the speculation is that this bone belonged to someone that was as old as 22, 23, but could have possibly have been as young as 16 or 17. Um, the oldest Sodder child that disappeared was, let's see, was 14 years old. So older than what you would expect. And again, we'll get into some of the theories. But all the bone fragments were belonged to the same person. It wasn't like they found five bone fragments. They found one bone fragment of one person.
Mhm.
And yeah, um, weird. So
Yeah.
okay, the fruits of the investigation. So let me scroll through my notes. Uh, oh, the Italian salesman or the insurance salesman. Turns out he was a very prominent member of the Italian community. Now, we don't know much about him after that. He, by the time they figured out who he was, he had either moved or passed away. But they weren't able to find him. But they were able to find out that that salesman was a very prominent member of the Italian community.
Mm.
Um, okay, yeah. So the Italian salesperson from earlier on, that salesperson turns out to be a very prominent member of the Italian community.
Mm-mm.
Now, unfortunately for the Sodders, by the time they found out who he had either moved or disappeared or whatever. So they weren't able to confront him. But they were like, wow, that random salesperson wasn't so random.
Mm.
Other fruits of the investigation. Jenny decides to start doing some experiments. So she gets several small animal bones. She goes to the local crematorium and she burns them at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours, far longer and far harder than the house could have been burning for. And bone fragments would survive.
Yep. Fishy. Fishy, fishy, fishy. And it ain't the local hooker.
Yep. George inquires about the truck. He thinks his truck might have been tampered with. Again, it's not really clear what happened with that. That kind of came inconclusively. Investigators contacted the woman who made the phone call at 1 a.m. at night where there was the weird laughter. And the woman's like, oh, she's like, sorry, I got drunk and called the wrong number. She's like, yeah, I don't know the Sodders at all. Which, like, okay, maybe
Sure.
that happened, or I don't know, man. Maybe something else was going there. But you can't really make someone fess up to doing something like that. So the
No.
Sodders kind of just had to deal with that lady saying that. But that was her argument.
Mm.
The rest of her life, Jenny kind of took care of the memorial garden. Um, but yeah, more investigations happened. Uh, George talked about how his wife heard the loud thump on the roof. Uh, and from witness reports, they said that someone had been throwing what looked like balls of fire at the house. And as they did more investigations, Sylvia, the youngest, found a small, dark green rubber ball like in a bush near the house. George looked at it. He said it looked like what looked like a pineapple bomb or a hand grenade of some sort. And the family later claimed that, yeah, someone was throwing pineapple bombs at their house. And that is what caused their house
Mm.
to go on fire. Other witnesses said that they saw the missing Sodder children themselves. One woman said she had been watching the fire from the road, and she said that she saw a car nearby, and she said that she saw one of the kids peering outside of the car and watching the house burn. Another woman at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston said that she had served the Sodder children breakfast at a hotel the morning after the fire, and that she said she later saw them get into a car with Florida license plates in the restaurant. Sodders hired a private investigator from a nearby town. He's actually the one who found out that the insurance salesman who had threatened George, he's the one who figured out who that guy was. He also learned that of rumors around Fayetteville that um, that a heart was found at the crime scene, but that the fire chief Morris, put the heart into a metal box and had it secretly buried.
Oh boy, this is all
Chief
so.
Fire Morris apparently also later confessed this to a local minister, who then turned this information to George. George and Jenny went and confronted Fire Chief Morris. Fire Chief Morris agreed to show them where he had buried the metal box. They went and dug up the metal box, but when the heart was dug out and examined, it was found that in reality it was not a human heart, but fresh beef liver that had never even been exposed to the fire.
Mm.
When they asked Morris why he had put this liver into the box and buried it and chose to confess it years later, Chief Fire Chief Morris said he had done it because he had hoped that the Sodders would find it and finally have closure that their missing children had indeed died in the fire.
What the heck?
For the rest of their life, the Sodders would continue to look for their kids. At one point, it was reported that an adult version of Maurice, one of the children, was spotted in New York. A picture was sent to the family. The family contacted the man, but the man did not respond back to them. At another point, a picture was taken of what looked like to be one of their daughters at a local school. George drove 8 hours to the school, walked up to the school, demanded to see the girl, but the school never let him see the girl, and they're like, "You need to leave." And so for several decades, basically until they die, slowly George dies, Jenny dies.
Yeah.
The other kids are also looking for their siblings. They die. And then finally, little Sylvie, who was 3 years old at the time, in her old age, hops on messaging boards, Discord servers, all the likes. And, you know, really old Sylvia is messaging all these people and she's saying, "Hey, what do you think happened? Do you think my siblings could be found?" And she does this until she too passes away in 2021, about 4 years ago.
Wow. That's crazy because she wasn't much older than my grandma.
Hmm.
My grandma was born in 42.
Wow, look at that. So, yeah, yes, Sylvie was born in 1942. So, yeah, she would be the same age.
Hmm.
And that's the story, man. That's the story.
Wow.
Uh, I am going to very quickly run through the theories, and then we'll decide which one we like. So, hey, we always have to have this one. But the first theory is aliens. Aliens came down, kidnapped the five Sodder children, and now this one has a little bit more to it. This isn't just saying aliens randomly.
Yeah.
Uh, the balls of fire that were reported, some of the witnesses reported that the balls of fire came from someone throwing balls of fire at the house. However, some people reported that the balls of fire were raining down from the sky from what looked like to be a mysterious metal object.
Mm.
So, fires raining down from a mysterious metal object in the sky. Uh, Technology is not working correctly, right? Like and
Yeah.
again, if you believe in the faulty wiretapping theory, then maybe the aliens feed into this a little bit. But the wiretapping's acting weird. If you think it was acting weird, the car is acting weird. The car's not starting up the way it should. So that is the alien theory.
Yeah.
Other than the witness report of balls of fire raining down, I don't know. That's not real. That's not really. I mean, I'm the one that tends to be skeptical of aliens in the first place. But I'm like, okay, whatever. Did you have any thoughts?
No, I mean I could kind of see where some people could view that, but the question I have is like usually in alien abduction stories, although there will be some where we will talk about in the future where the people don't come back. For example, Frederick Valentich. The thing with this is like if aliens were to abduct someone, why do they take all five kids? Why didn't they take all nine children? You know?
Yeah, definitely some holes in that theory, right? So, um, whew, I'm starting to get hiccups. I need some water or something.
Come on, you can push through.
Right, push through. Okay, the next theory is the mafia theory. So, you know, George had said some stuff about their boy Mussolini.
Yeah.
They didn't like that. That insurance salesman comes by. He obviously doesn't like George. And yeah, there's a few alternatives to this theory. One mafia theory is that they intended to kill the whole family. Um, and so, that was going to send a message to the Italian community that, like, hey, if you're as prominent as George and you are choosing to speak out against our interests, we're going to get you, right? The other theory was the mafia intended to kidnap some of the kids and send a message that way. Again, probably one of the problems with that theory is like, why was there not a ransom note, or why was there not
Yeah.
body parts sent to George and Jenny Sodder? Like Godfather style. You had the head of that
The horse
horse
head.
to their bed, so why not
Yeah.
the heads of the Sodder children sent to George and Jenny? Who knows, right? But yeah, there's a few variations of the mafia theory, but in some sense, the mafia was involved. They wanted to get George and Jenny, and so they did this,
Yeah.
right? Um, and that would have possibly explained the balls of fire. It's like, who knows, right? Who knows? Uh, the other theory was this one's actually a little bit related to the Black Volga theory. So again, Black Volga was in Europe. So unless we're having a crossover episode, um, but this relates a little bit to Black Volga, or maybe Jimmy Hoffa even, somewhat kind of. But one of the theories is that the mafia or another third party, maybe Black Volga, maybe some other organization, kidnapped the children and sold their body parts to science or whatever, right? And that's one of the things we talked about with the Black Volga. Why were they kidnapping these children? It's like, well, hey, their body parts could be used for
Yeah.
for a different thing. Well, one thing that is strange Let's say you take the view that the kids didn't die in the fire, but they were kidnapped. Why, why were the children not making noise, or why was there not signs of noises of a struggle that would
Yeah.
wake up George and Jenny? Which, if you are taking the view that the Sodder children were kidnapped, presumably it was somebody that they knew, somebody that they trusted. You know, maybe like a great uncle Albert or
Yeah.
another prominent member, and he comes in and he's like, "Hey kids, there's an emergency. Come with me. We're gonna run out of the house, or we're gonna go do some kind of surprise for your mom and dad." And that would explain why
Yeah.
was still asleep on the couch, and like why Marion wasn't taken with the rest of the kids, right? Because Marion was with the five other kids.
So my question. So that was what I was going to ask before we get to. How many more theories do you have before I ask this?
Um, this is really the theory that they died in the fire and why their bodies wouldn't have been found. So really, just one more.
Okay. So before you go with that theory, the question I have is, so the five children, they were downstairs. So the children that wanted to stay up originally, those were the five that went missing.
Them and Marion. So Marion
Okay.
was with them.
Marion. So them and Marion are the six people that were downstairs.
Yeah. Although Marion doesn't go missing, she's asleep on the couch. At least
How
as of 12:30.
did
Yeah.
they say how old she was?
Marion was how old was she? Yeah, I mean she was definitely a teenager. She ran out by herself. So okay, she was born in 1926. So she would have been about 19.
Okay. Okay. All right. Go with the last theory, and then I think I know what happened.
Okay, all right.
Mm.
So the last theory was the Sodder children did indeed die that night. They were up in the attic. The fire happened. Uh, the theory goes that the heat, like why didn't they respond when their parents called out to them? It's like, well, they had already died.
Yeah.
The heat, again, the heat. We don't really know how hot it could have gotten, and Jenny's experiments were interesting, but it's just like, okay, presumably it's highly unlikely that the fire got hot enough to burn through their bones, but it's
Mhm.
not impossible for that to happen. And so the last theory is the Sodder children did indeed die in that fire. The fire was enough, and that's where the bone fragments I mentioned earlier. It's like the bone fragments belong to one of the kids,
Yeah.
and this is just a case of the Sodders not being able to move on and holding on to any shred of evidence they could find.
Yeah.
So those are the theories. Will, give what you think happened. I'll give what I think happened, and I think that should wrap up this
I
story.
think my theory, the reason why, what's hard to explain, like I think I can understand why her name is Marion, right? Why she was left behind and the other children were taken. Marion probably was too old, but it makes you. I mean, there's so many holes in this. It's hard to figure out, because I don't think they burned up in the fire. We know that. We know for sure because the only bone fragments they found was for somebody who was 16 to 23 years old, which is way too old for the oldest child.
Yeah, the oldest child was 14, so it's
So
like,
it's like, what happened? Like there should be at least like, and if these dictionaries and these books are surviving, they should have, or some piece of them should have survived. And then the whole truck not working, the ladder missing, the hose. I'm not going to talk about the hose.
Will, I missed a very important part. The ladder was found later. The ladder was found at the bottom of a snowy embankment. Someone had thrown the ladder
Are you?
down the river. Okay,
Is the mob?
so okay, all right. So go ahead. Go ahead and continue. Yeah.
So I think it's the mob because I don't understand why they took the children, But this just sounds so much like a mob hit. The green balls, the ladder, the truck, the phone calls, all of this. I mean, and you got to think about it. It's crazy to think. I mean, but it does sound like it. You know, you talk bad. You're a prominent figure in this community, and you think you could just get away talking crap about Mussolini. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
our freaky favorite dictator.
yeah. I think this is the mafia as well. Um, I think, and I think this is where I will expand the theory a little bit because, with the exception of Sylvia, the older children survived, right? So the two older Sodder brothers survived.
Yeah,
Marion, who's 19, she survives, and then Sylvia's the youngest. But um, yeah, I think for the mob, they walked in, and again, the mob was Italian, right? So
yeah,
um, I think this was someone prominent in the community. They could easily go in and say, "Hey, kids, yeah, let's go do something nice for your parents." I think they could get them to leave the house without making a lot of noise, right? So, which is why you would not hear sounds of a struggle. Because if you're kidnapping 5 people, it'd be hard to kidnap all 5 of them at the same.
yeah. You're gonna have them running around. Somebody's gonna run upstairs and tell mom and dad, and out the door.
Right. So, I think someone kind of led them out of the house. Um, Maybe they wanted Marion, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But the ages, you have the 5 kids. The youngest was 5, Betty Sodder. She was 5. The oldest was 14, Maurice Sodder. But and this is where this gets really dark. But for people that like do either human trafficking or some kind of experiments on body parts,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the age you would want to target. And again,
Yeah,
this ties back to the Black Volga stuff. But mob's like, hey, we can get 5 kids. We could potentially sell them off, make some money for us. We can also get revenge on the Sodders. Uh,
yeah. What's difficult about it? Like, and I think you and I both agree it's the mob. I just think the question is like obviously we know the motive. The motive was he pissed us off because he probably talked trash about Mussolini like he did, and he thinks he's this high prominent figure. He can't get away with this. But the hard part is like, would the mob actually sell off body parts? Why would the mob take the younger children? Why wouldn't they take the older children? You
right,
know, who who walked in the house? Like obviously, like how do they get the kids out of the house? And because I for sure know that those children did not die in that fire. There's no way they did. With all the evidence we see, I think for sure. I mean, this is like a mystery pod. This is a mystery episode. I think this mystery is going to remain unsolved. I think we can say it's the mafia, but what truly, like, why would the mafia take those children only and not the other ones?
yeah, and it's just one of those things where I think this is just a really really weird case, and I just really don't know if we'll ever find out the answer.
No,
Uh,
I think this is going to be one of those that's just going to remain unsolved.
at the very least, so I mean, George and Jenny for the rest of their life, whether their kids died in that fire or whether their kids were kidnapped or who knows what happened to them.
Do
Uh,
you?
on a human level, till the day they died, this was something they had to live with
So my
for
question is,
their life.
that's the thing you can think about is, you know, obviously like with their oldest daughter, the 19-year-old who was left on the couch. My question is, do you think they took the youngest children because, like as a parent, I feel like you never want to outlive your children, but if your children at least have gotten up to a point, like say I died tomorrow, I mean, it would be sad for my parents, but they'll be like, you know what, he had a good life, he was married, he had a child, it's tragic that it was cut short, but at least he had this. But like for a 5-year-old, they had so much life ahead of them. Could the mob have taken them and then killed them in a way to where and made it to where these children just disappeared? I mean, because what's worse as a parent? Okay, your child either A, dying in a fire, or B, your child completely vanishing and you have no clue where they went. Like, what's going to eat at you the most? Because like the whole point of the mob getting rid of them is to make a point. What's going to drive a point harder? Your child is dead in a fire that we started, or your child is missing. You're never going to see him again. and you have no clue who did it. You have no clue where they went. You have no clue they did die in the fire or not. I feel like if I was a mobster and I wanted to torment a father and a mother, that would be the way I'd torment them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. For
But
sure.
I think we can think of an answer, but I don't think we'll ever truly know.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think that will do it. Yeah, longer episode today, but definitely a lot of information to get through. So,
yeah, hopefully we didn't bore y'all to death. I think compared to Roanoke, I think this was a lot better.
I agree. So,
right.
So yeah, I think this is going to end up being our second longest episode, right?
Mm-hmm. So thank y'all for sticking through to the end. If you did, give us a like and a follow. And make sure you guys follow us on Patreon, like we said, and on our Instagram and Twitters. And yeah, we appreciate y'all. We're going to keep on doing this. And yeah, make sure you don't start any fires.